content over everything.
You're inciting racial hatred.
But you'll never know anyone's intentions. How will you know if I use the word?
You will.
No, you won't. You don't know what goes on in my cerebral cortex.
There's a difference between
Believe me,
but a lot of
you not.
but a lot
You'll
of
never know what goes on in my
But a lot of the law, unfortunately, is
You'll
grey.
never
It's a
ever know.
difficult
I
area.
can say the word. You don't know my
But
intentions.
listen, I want to hear Ty's take on freedom of speech as he sees it.
I've even got questions, you know.
Go for it.
I
Ask
probably
questions.
couldn't do justice because I'm jumping in and I'm not warmed up yet.
Get warmed up, my friend.
So
Get warmed up.
I'm trying to get some energy off you guys, you know.
Oh, let me ask you a question.
No
a bit of a loaded
twerking. You're
question.
white. You're not allowed to
Did you
twerk.
agree with the free speech Tommy Robinson event?
No.
The event.
That whole event, not initially the speakers, but the concept of the event.
For Raj, it was more of a
The
celebration.
kind of like a philosophy of the event about free speech. Did you agree with that?
Which I wouldn't really not know what their concept is, to be honest. But let me tell you what I agree with, just in case I get things wrong, you get me? Yeah? I've been coming down Speaker's Corner for some time as well, innit? Yeah? But before that, I've always had my own Speaker's Corner, and that is wherever I was.
Cool.
You get me?
Cool.
And I like that. I like being able to meet people on the tube, on a train, on a bus, in my job, and just talk freely.
And do live
That's
streams.
my free.
And that's what we're arguing about,
Yeah.
talking freely.
Yeah.
Being able to say whatever we want to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
Even if it offends somebody, being able to
Yeah,
hear
now,
their views.
now here's one or two questions that I've got. Like, you know, where do we even start? Because, for example, the movies is full of hate speech. The movies, Hollywood.
Maybe you're right.
And it's a programming program whereby...
We'd include that in there. So the
Yeah,
freedom
that's
of
where
expression
I'm
for
thinking.
for the writers, for the producers.
Yeah,
Raj and
books,
I, I'm assuming you would
books,
agree that freedom of expression of all forms.
Books.
Books the same.
journals,
Yep.
magazines, revision into history books, education,
Yep.
policy.
Everything.
Where do we start? You see what I'm saying? It's too deep.
Well,
but
this is what I would say to you.
Yeah.
Where we start is with complete freedom. That's where we start.
And then
You can
restrict.
say absolutely anything.
oh, you're advocating
No, I'm
for
saying
that kind
no,
of
I'm
new
saying that's
start,
where
yeah?
we start.
Okay.
We start with the broadest possible definition, and that would be everything
Up to the
goes.
point of inciting violence. That's the limit.
Right. Okay.
So
well,
we
that,
don't.
okay.
we
So,
don't.
okay.
yeah,
So that's
let's
right.
limit
So,
hatred.
so you're
No
putting,
inciting violence.
right. So you're putting a cap on it, but actually that cap is already in place in the statute.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
in
So
law.
this is
So
what,
we're good.
just so that Ty knows that we don't
So-
cross the
right,
line.
so-
So if you go, I dislike this group, but you also say, I dislike this group, but I want X, Y, Z to happen to them, that's inciting violence. Right?
Well,
so there's a difference.
Like Tan, like Tan.
I don't
Like
think-
Tan, the hate preacher. You mean.
No.
What yeah.
No,
You
not
just described Tan. Just
Yeah, I think you've crossed the line for me there. Because I would say that as long as you do not incite violence directly at an individual.
Yeah, we're slightly different.
Yeah,
on that.
because if somebody gets up and says, for example, if somebody's a Nazi, because we like to bring Nazis because no one's a Nazi.
Bring the
everyone hates
Nazis down.
So if somebody
Say
gets
what
on
we
a
like
soapbox
about them, 'cause
and
nobody
they
can
say,
defend them.
let's kill
moustache.
all,
Someone come down with a
we should
moustache and
kill
a
all
Hitler.
Jews.
Why Hitler?
I believe that they should be able to say that in public.
You believe.
No, I actually, let's go further. Let's say I want that. I want that because I believe that if you expose, you raise awareness, and then you critique it, and then you can change it. If you keep it undercover, it's dangerous because what you end up with is people going out and harming people.
And going into echo chambers and speaking
Yeah.
to people that are just like-minded and not broadening their horizons up.
So I'd rather they just come out and speak it out in public. Now, I understand, like Issa's point was that it has a ripple effect. You could effectively create a Nazi state by allowing these people to speak. But I have more confidence in people's ability to be educated and be able to critique this nonsense and not just fall for it. I mean, clearly in history, people have fell for some terrible, terrible shit. But I think it's, in this time and day, we should be able to say what we want and allow people to make their own minds up about it. Obviously, if we see a movement towards something dangerous, then other people will come back and they'll start attacking it, like Raj would say. They come in and start condemning it.
Tell me something, Brother James.
yeah.
Brother James. Do you think governments too, and government bodies could be held accountable for instigating hate speech, hate crime, hate envisioning?
Yes.
Yeah? Because at the moment it seems like governments are just doing it on individuals. But the individuals can't look at the governments and say, you're doing the same thing. You see what I mean? Yeah. Because we are basically the government, if I'm correct here.
Well, we should be. We're just not.
In a
It's
perfect
one other
democracy,
problem.
yeah.
It's one other problem.
But I would say, to touch on your point, I think I know where you're going with this. If a government has a biased position that is promoting hatred, I think you're absolutely right. There should be some law against that.
But who's going to hold them accountable? Like they could hold us accountable.
Exactly.
Like me and you can say something
The
now.
law courts.
Who's going to take them there?
Well, they do. I mean, they.
I mean, like,
I know it's tricky.
I would love. What I'm
How'd
saying
you
is,
do it? How'd you
what
do
I'm
it?
saying,
How'd you take
brother
government to
James,
court?
is I would like to take them, but
Well, you
I
take
wouldn't be
no,
able
but,
to.
no, what you do is you take
How?
individuals to court. So if an individual in government starts expressing views that are crossing some
Well,
line,
that's the
that are
whole
in statute,
point of replacing parliamentary members is so that they take the responsibility, they take the rap, but then the government goes on, you know. So
I know.
how do you get, you know, how do you take on, you know, government?
And
I
how
have a
will
whole
government
issue. I mean,
work?
I have
How will
issues
government
about the way
work
the government
when
works.
you start?
That's when you get war, isn't it? When you get war is when government takes
what's-
another government
Look at
to
what's
account.
going on with journalists across the world. For example, some Al Jazeera journalists were slammed up in prisons, maybe in Egypt, I think. Yeah, a couple of them in Egypt. Yeah, a couple of times. Yeah, so people are being afraid now to become journalists.
It's freedom of press, isn't it?
Yeah, soldiers are becoming afraid to become soldiers because certain things are not tolerated anymore, and so on and so forth. You see, and we as normal citizens are becoming afraid to even critique anything.
It's always been that way
Yeah.
with government.
So we're reaching a point now,
But
and
that's
I'm
why
not
we
sure.
need freedom of expression.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we
And
can-
I
You should
agree.
go to Rita's
And I
So that
agree.
we can speak out against it.
Right. So I'm thinking right now, I'm hoping that I haven't jumped in at the deep end. I don't know what's going on.
you got
Do you,
Leon, I was
would you
just
say?
gonna support you.
Would you say this new awareness of freedom of speech or anti-freedom of speech? Do you think it's coming out of the Islamophobic narrative?
I think it's coming, I might be wrong here, but
Yes.
my understanding is it's coming from a requirement to have blasphemy laws. I think that's pretty much the driving force.
I think it's a conflict between governments. Like we said, the only way you can bring a government to account is from another government challenging something with equal power.
Right.
You see, and so that's what we've got going on. So other governments are influencing, if you like, British government or whatever it is, that can then impose, you know, blasphemy laws or whatever. I think that's what's happening. It's just massive.
Dangerous waters.
It's really dangerous.
That's what it is, though. I mean, you can. I always use the example that a Christian, you're a Christian yourself. You can walk down the road and there's Dawa stalls saying Jesus is not God. You must be offended by that as a Christian.
All day
I'm just
long.
saying some Christians would, yeah.
No, brother Raj.
I'm not
brother
offended
Raj.
by
But some would though.
I wouldn't take offense
But
to
no,
that.
you not. But there would be
But-
some Muslims, there would be some Christians. But
Yes.
if you was to do another stall and have Christians saying that Muhammad is not the prophet, blah blah blah, you would have
let's
offense
They would
taken.
choose offense. They would.
Yeah, they would choose
Let's
offense.
do some and let's do some definitions here. I like definitions from the
I don't
foundation
choose offense.
because if we don't, we're jumping in somewhere where we
Please.
started looking at the movie halfway in the movie.
Sure,
We didn't cut. Number one, what is blasphemy? Number two, what is hate?
Right.
You see what I mean?
But you touch on a good point. Now,
Yeah.
what religious folks would want is they would want to define for their own religion what the blasphemy law is.
Right.
And this is where we're going to get into trouble. So, for example, currently it's offensive to Muslims if we draw cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad.
For example.
If we insult the Prophet Muhammad.
For example.
I believe these are things that they consider to be insults.
For example,
to the
hold on
religion.
there for me, brother James. Is it offensive to offend Prophet Tai?
I feel
If I
offended.
declare myself a prophet today, and I've got 2 or 3 people who
About
agree,
white man, white
is it
man.
offensive to
Repent for
them?
your sins.
Is it offensive to them? Would it be offensive to Raj if he holds somebody of high esteem and we insult that person? Is it offensive to you? Should you wake up in the morning and say, I hold whoever?
My position, Ty.
you know, was it offensive?
Ty, my
And
position
you know what I'm
is
saying? You
even
see what
if
I'm
it is
saying?
offensive,
Right.
I still want the right for people to say it. That's my position.
So,
know
That's
what it
right.
is?
now what I'm saying,
It's
yeah,
because
go
you got
on.
a living. When you got a living person, that person can, you know, get you for slander or libel. But if you got somebody who's no longer here, and then people are saying this is our prophet, you can't say that, and bringing in laws, that's where you're losing freedom of speech. You see, so, but we're not talking about somebody.
I
That person
actually think that
can't
freedom
defend
of
themselves.
expression is
Did you
what
get-
makes
this is where you get the
society great.
You
I
get the
actually
conflict.
really believe
You get the
that.
conflict between different cultures. This is.
I
part
mean,
of
we're
it
seeing
coming
it.
out.
We're
That's
seeing it.
another
Sorry,
word. That's
sorry.
another
We're
keyword.
seeing it within Speaker's Corner that
You're a prophet of a
certain people like
culture.
Omar said I got a piece of shit underneath my turban.
Perfectly
I
valid. I
found it
defend his right to
offensive, but I
say it.
didn't go around and say go to the police or anything. I said,
Offensive,
but I was
offensive,
offended.
offensive, yeah.
But if I was to say the same thing about someone with a hijab, the backlash would be huge. I might even get beaten up. So there is a kind of like a double standard where the Muslims get
double
offended.
standard is another key word.
But we're not talking about, let me to be clear, we're not talking about their reaction.
Culture,
We're
different
talking about
cultural. I think the first problem, Brother James,
Should there be any
Brother Steve, yeah?
No, in my view, no. Then,
Should there be any blasphemy laws?
Look, you're asking the wrong person. You know why? Yeah.
Sure,
You know why?
sure.
Because one key point,
You
Brother
don't have to
Steve
answer. You
made.
can plead
The
the fifth.
racist.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you
One-
can plead the fifth.
Yeah. One important
White
keyword,
privilege.
Brother Steve said here, is this. Yeah. We have a cultural clash. A culture clash. Yes. Whereby, I find the English people very, how do you say?
say a nice word.
Hard to offend, if you like.
Easygoing.
We are
Easy
exceptionally tolerant.
Yeah, exceptionally tolerant. I don't know if it's because of the guilt.
Probably it is.
Because
What
we're
do you call
on top.
it?
We're on
White
top.
guilt.
Who knows?
We're on
The
top.
white guilt. I don't know if it's like that, but by and large,
It's easy to
I think
be,
they're
guilt-free when you're
they're
on
very easygoing in terms of tolerance.
Oh, a
to
nice
other
thing about white
people's,
people for once.
Let me speak,
Oh,
man.
sorry.
When we're not,
Let me finish.
when we're not killing people.
Yeah, prophets.
Sorry.
And you're one yourself.
Sorry.
You are one yourself.
Sorry.
innit? You are one yourself.
Go for it,
And
Ty. Go
prophets
for
let
it.
prophets speak in it. That's you're offending me right
Oh
now.
no, sorry.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
man.
call
I got
the
told up by
police.
Ty.
You
Sorry.
have to call the police.
going
and
somewhere
We're gonna
bad
have
in
to
the
get some free
afterlife.
speech.
Go, go, Ty.
Note him down for me. I beg
Yeah,
you.
afterlife bad for this man.
Naughty boy, naughty boy.
Free speech, absolutely.
So we got this cultural infusion, which looks on one surface like it wasn't well thought out, but on the other hand, it looks like a clear sign of conspiracy to make sure this madness can happen.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
now, like they say, one man's meat is another man's poison. Yeah.
Yes.
What I find inoffensive to English people suddenly is so sensitively offensive to Muslims.
Yes.
For days and days and days, Muslims come here and slander the Pope, slander Christianity, slander
Ty, don't
Jesus
you
Christ,
feel-
slander the Queen, slander, and nobody takes any
But
offense.
Ty, do you not feel
Yeah.
that this freedom, this tolerance,
Yeah.
is a really positive thing?
It is. That's what I'm
Yeah, yeah.
saying.
So
As long
we're
as no
all-
violence.
It
As long
is.
as no violence. Yeah.
That's what I'm
Physical
saying.
violence.
But
yeah.
that is freedom of expression.
That's what I'm
That
saying.
you can come here, he can be a Sikh, he can wear his turban.
Yeah.
No one's going to say, oh, I'm offended by that.
Yeah.
But when you look at other countries and other cultures, there's this kind of, if you do that,
There's a
if you're not
ceiling,
wearing
there's a
this,
ceiling wall
if a woman is
for
doing this,
cultural exchange.
this
There's
is a
ceiling
super
wall.
positive
Yeah,
thing, right?
exactly. So that's why I said I wonder why the English, with all their colorful history, why they are at the moment the most tolerant in terms of multiculturalism. Yeah, you couldn't
We've been
even
on
go.
top. I'm afraid that's it.
I
Soulful, but that's
must
it.
admit to you, as much as Nigeria is a liberal, secular, religious, it's everything. There's certain things that don't go down well with our culture. Certain things don't go down well with
Let's
our
go
culture.
somewhere.
Certain
let's go
things
back
are all
to the-
right.
Let's go
But
back
you'll get to a
to the
point
M word with Ty. See what you
where
think.
somebody
Be
will
interesting.
slap your face in the street because you
popular word.
disrespected their father.
That can happen here, though.
Yeah.
That can
Ty,
happen
can
here.
I put you on? I want to put you on the spot.
Help me out though.
No, you're going to be on the spot.
Be kind on me.
If you get offended, don't worry about it. Just switch off.
All right.
But earlier we had problems because we started talking about the M word,
Right.
and a lot.
I.e. as in NIG.
You know the one.
Okay.
You know the one.
Okay.
Now there's a lot of black brothers here. Most of the black brothers, with the exception of one here, were very felt.
IGGA or is it NIGGER?
ER.
Which one are you talking about?
The other one's the
You see
rappers.
how you just broke it
You've
down?
been looking
Yeah.
at graffiti.
You guys were talking about
graffiti.
which one?
Which one were you talking about?
GGA. No, there is a difference.
GGA.
There is
It's all
a
the same.
difference. No.
ER.
There is a big difference.
Let's get nasty. Let's talk ER.
All right, let's talk ER.
Now Raj and I felt that it was perfectly valid to say it, as long as you didn't intend to,
So how
recite
you
it.
say it, how you say
Yeah,
it
what
as
you
well.
say.
How?
Yeah. But
Right.
a lot of the black brothers here felt that because of the context, because of the history, and one of the black brothers was going back to Christianity, it all sounded a bit crazy, and because I was ignorant as well, from his point of view, that word, of all the words, forget blasphemy, he was a Muslim as well, that was the one that had to be banned. He wanted that absolutely
banned from people's
Has to start
usage.
with-
Yeah, that
Has to
if
start
a
with them
person used it in any context from his perspective, because of its history, it must be banned. Now, how do you feel about that?
It's a double-edged sword.
Agreed.
It's a double-edged sword because I myself have been a kind of like proactive defender of the usage of that word.
Good.
I'll give you an example. A couple of years ago, I don't know if it's a couple of, slightly a decade, I can't remember anymore, but I went to a radio station and I was making an example based on that word itself. And I was pointing out on the radio station that the word nigger was never a derogatory term. It was always a descriptive term. Right. It was always a descriptive term which carried real value. But because things...
So it was an identification.
Yeah, and even fashionable, if you like. You know, like somebody would say Caucasian right now. It tones something. But let's say some horrible things start getting attached to the idea of Caucasianism. People will be like, oh, you can't say that. Oh, you can't say... But the point of the matter is, the word Negro is a Latin word. Yeah, which means black, dark. So yeah. So I'm looking at, you know, things across the world. Nigeria is actually a Latin word, which is Negro land. Yeah. There are two Negro lands in Africa named Negro land. That's the Niger Republic and Nigeria itself. So they're both in the Latin land of Negroes. So it's nigger actually. In the French language it's called nigger or Niger.
Yeah, like Niger.
Yeah? So you still can't run away from it.
Interesting.
You still cannot run away from it.
See,
even
to me,
if you ban the
this
word.
conversation now is exactly what we wanted to have earlier.
Right.
Because your view to me is totally progressive.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
very
see it
progressive.
absolutely the most positive way to do it. Because that way the word just becomes a non-word.
It's
a non-word.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
what I want to see is a world where in the future where a white person says that word and it is meaningless to you. Meaningless. You don't get any offence from it. Surely that's got to be a
Not
better
meaningless,
situation.
but not offensive. But it's
No,
an interesting
meaning-
thing too,
meaning-
because
it's
I don't think,
for
I don't
instance-
think that would ever happen.
Can I
though.
say, Raj,
I would like to see
Raj,
that.
I know. In an ideal
was
society,
that offensive?
everyone would want to.
It wouldn't be a music. I know, and it sounds so
wouldn't
good, doesn't it? That's the thing. I like rap music. So.
It's interesting too, because there's another one for you. If someone calls me a Brit, I'm like, yeah, great. So what? Someone calls someone Aussie, yeah, great. They don't give a shit. Someone calls someone Paki, it's a terrible thing.
didn't
If
used
someone
to
calls
be.
someone nigger, like you're
Yeah,
saying Niger,
yeah,
nigger, that's become something terrible too.
Terrible
It's really
too, yeah,
interesting.
yeah.
But it's the same thing essentially as calling someone a Brit or an Aussie.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay,
or
I think
Depends how
Raj,
you
I want to go back to
depends
Raj.
how you use
Kiwi,
these
or
words.
I wanna go
Kiwi,
back to what Raj's
or,
point
you
was.
know,
Yeah.
all
How
them
you
other
say it.
names.
Yeah.
Raj said
It's
that
interesting, it's
it
very
would never
interesting.
happen, and I accept that might be true. But we still agree it would be better to aim for that.
Yeah. And there's no harm in aiming for something, but I personally think human nature is very destructive.
Because the thing I
You
don't
know,
like about it,
and
Raj, is
so-
it
and
makes
I
people
am
victim culture.
self-destructive
Not always.
being.
Could
you
I-
accept
as
that?
well?
See,
admit-
Ty's a progressive.
I've
He
been-
gets
look,
it,
my
right?
viewpoint is
This is exactly the kind of guy we wanted here.
My viewpoint is I'm a misanthrope. I see bad in a lot of people, and so I don't want to. My kind of like responsibility, what I think they can achieve, is very limited.
Right,
in
but
terms
Raj,
of
if we remove
prejudice.
offence,
but I still
sure,
think we
that's a
should
good
try.
thing.
But we should still try.
Yeah.
But I think it would fail at some point. But we can still try
Yeah, I
and
accept.
aim for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that it's a
It's an
total
ideal,
failure.
right?
It just
It's an
means it's a
ideal.
part failure. But let's try and get there.
Yeah, because otherwise you maintain this victim culture.
Yeah.
And it's horrible. We don't want that. I mean, if this
And
man...
this is why I have a problem.
If this man with his intelligence can understand that, and he says, yeah, easily, and yet when we were surrounded by the black brothers before, there was only one guy, and funny enough, he was the youngest. The youngest guy. Did you see him with the white t-shirt? He was the guy that said, this makes no sense to me. And no one was listening to him because he was the youngest guy and he wasn't projecting his voice. And the loudest voices were saying, it's ban it, ban it.
Yeah, but it's group
If
think
they
again.
want to ban it, they have to start themselves.
They'll
stop
have to
using it
change.
themselves.
They'll have to change too many
That's it.
things.
Yeah.
You see, a lot of people. Don't forget, I'm a young person too. As much as I like to say but I'm still a young person too. So everybody's seen the situation from where they caught it from. You know what I'm saying? So if you come into the pack when Mohammed Hijab was boxing Hussein, for example, that's what you know. If you come into the pack when Mohammed Hijab stopped boxing Hussein but is now stopping another fight, you'd come saying you saw him being a peacemaker.
Yeah.
The guy who saw him in a fight would say, no, that's not right. I saw him fighting.
Yeah.
So you got two different opinions about the same one person.
Sure.
So what we have at
Are you
the
saying
moment...
Mohammed Hijab is schizophrenic? Is that what you're saying?
No. You know, content. Cut.
Shout out.
Say,
Abrogate that
Sorry.
from, you know. But, you know, on a joke level, you know, because we just want this to carry some weight for some, you know, Mohammed Hijab knows it's not a personal hatred, it's a hatred because we're in an arena. The arena was ideology and we had to go to war as with ideology, but outside of here we don't have any real beef with nobody you know, so but we're talking right now, you see what I'm saying? But what we're saying in essence is a lot of people get emotional depending on where they caught the information, you know. So you might be
propaganda.
I was going through the Prince Harry, innit? Prince Harry married yesterday, innit? He married this Meghan, yeah? So anyways, there's some debate. But some boy over in America, some man over in America raised the fact that, you know, they actually let the marriage take place on Malcolm X's birthday. You see what I'm saying?
Is that right?
Yeah, it was actually Malcolm X's birthday.
We were talking about Malcolm X earlier.
You see what I'm saying? So there looks like there's a real reason why they staged that thing. So I can work on a few conspiracy theories to add to it. I could do that, you know, but I don't think it's necessary for now. Then other thing was, when I was scrolling through the other people who were born on this day or died on this day, I came across a white Australian. As I was going to scroll off his name, it says he was born in Nigeria. Or he was Nigerian. And I'm like, Australian, Nigerian. I scrolled back up and I'm looking at him. He was born in 1957 in Nigeria. So he's a nigger. Excuse the word. But that's what you are. You're a nigger. You see what I'm saying? Because, and they put it there that he's a Nigerian. I can't remember his name, but I believe you would probably be able to, you know, pull that for me. He was one of Australia's four rock band musician leader.
Oh, Michael Hutchins.
Could be. Type it up if somebody got Google, you know. One of Australians top
In Excess.
rock or
In
pop.
Excess.
I can't remember, you know. I'm not. I was tired at the
Jason
time.
Donovan.
I was tired at the time,
think?
but I just, you know, so it was funny because I've
We
met
don't really want Jason Donovan associated with Malcolm X, do we? It's kind of like...
How did that could be? My memory is slightly bad, so I just, you know, I was tired at times. So I just go to sleep. It's 5 o'clock in the morning, so I'm like, okay, just leave it. Nigerian, alright, fine. Because I met a white English man long time ago who told me, where are you from? I said, Africa. He said, yes, of course I know. I said, where in Africa? I said, West Africa. So of course, get to it, my boy.
Normally when I ask a guy that, they say something like Leeds, and I think I've got nowhere with that. I've lost that, you know.
Right. So I said to him, Nigeria. Then he said, where in Nigeria? So I almost described my family name for him before he kept quiet. Then he said, all my children were born in Nigeria. So they're Nigerian. So I'm like, wow. You know, when a white man says that his children are Nigerian, he's really telling you that, look.
But isn't it
you
weird?
See what I'm saying?
Isn't it interesting that when somebody says in Britain that they are British,
right,
and they have, you know, they have a different skin colour, brown skin colour, or they're look Chinese.
Right.
No one would dare say or think even, well, they're not British.
Right.
You'd never do that.
Right.
But isn't it funny that there was a gentleman here who was white, and he said he was Japanese.
Right.
And everybody was teasing him.
Teasing
they said, don't be ridiculous, Japanese.
There you go.
Did you see that
There
guy?
you go. I was still talking about that with somebody.
He was slightly older than me, but he was saying, he got really offended. I thought he was joking.
I was still talking
And he
to
said,
one brother there today.
I guess
about
because
the
he
same
lived there,
issue.
and he had a nationality, I guess. So he was saying, why are you questioning that? And it was very interesting because, of course, it plays on this this
But don't you
inherent
think the word
kind of
United
ism.
Kingdom has a more broader kind of remit to include a lot of people? Now, the word English, if someone said I'm English, it has a bit more.
Yeah, it's a different. It's a
but
slightly
the
more
word
ethnic
United Kingdom,
feel
I
to
think
it.
the UK is in a unique position where it has this term that can encapsulate everybody from different races and different cultures. So
Well, you know, I think
I'll be honest,
including Tommy Robinson.
I feel British, but I don't feel English.
But you can. The point is, Raj, you can get a British passport.
Yeah, I feel British,
You have a
but
British
BC.
citizenship.
It's interesting you say that because Tommy Robinson's
Yeah,
Irish.
please come in. Brother, come over.
So I don't feel English, but I feel British.
Sure.
What I would.
I don't get excited about being English because
Come closer. Let the man come in.
I'm not classed as English unless I can go back 4 generations, right? This happened. This was a change.
Is that the rule?
Yeah. The reason is.
Let me pick this
The
up.
reason is.
Just close your eye.
A little bit of fluff in your eye.
Paper, innit?
I don't know what it is.
Don't let it fall in your eye.
Don't
No,
worry.
just close to your eye.
It's still there.
When we
because
stop.
I think Margaret Thatcher brought it
This
in.
is the makeup
because
department
you
of
could
content
follow
over
4
everything.
generations in Africa. Sorry, thanks.
The makeup artist, like he's doing.
Right.
Pick the speck out of your
could
brother's
follow-
eye before you pick the log out of yours. innit?
That's very good. Very
because
good.
you could follow for 4 generations, and therefore an Australian could be still classed as English, South African, and so on.
Yeah.
Right. So if I was the 4th generation, then I could be English. But other than that, no, I can be British.
Tell me
So
something,
I don't get
brother
excited
James.
about it.
Does being English, does it exclusively say somebody's white?
No,
Not at all.
it's
As far as you know.
English. It's talking about English, not
Yeah,
British.
English. Does it mean that it's white? Is there any historical basis to just say it means white? Because British people say, yeah, I can fit into that.
Well, it's interesting because in
Same thing.
England, the people have come here. I mean, like even with the original Robert Peelers, wasn't it the police that was set up? Some of the original police were actually black guys. They were actually black guys serving as police.
Right.
This is like 200 years ago. If
Right.
you look into this, but people say police are institutionally racist.
Right.
But there is history on that.
Well,
as
actually, the police said they were institutionally racist.
Well, they might have
It was
said that, I
actually
don't
the
know.
police that said
He's
that.
an expert on this.
No, it was,
Good,
wasn't it?
good.
The police said that there was institutional racism. It was, it was the head of the police
They
force
said
that
it,
said
yeah,
that.
yeah.
It wasn't us.
And also, I think that when they found
When you
bodies,
say us, who are you?
when they found
Well, what I'm
bodies,
saying is it wasn't the people. It was the police themselves.
They found
said
people-
the head of the police said it was systemic racism within the police force.
yeah, they found bodies, of people of African descent in England. It's like 2,000 years ago. They found some in Eastbourne on the south coast of England, not so long ago. And one of the girls there, she was like of African descent. So there've been people coming.
But we've gone away
But-
from free
but it's
speech
interesting.
onto race.
But
I
on
know,
the subject
we're
of
gonna
England,
come, yeah.
it's very because I suppose there's
But it is
there's
connected
no,
to it.
it's
It's
connected.
connected, yeah.
So if you're buying apples, maybe if you get a Golden Delicious or Granny Smith, they're 2 different types of apple, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
But when does it become that one's a Granny Smith and one's a Golden Delicious? So
And when does it become that the two are not the
it's
same
interesting,
anymore,
isn't it?
or what?
Exactly,
Yeah.
because they're obviously different type of apples.
Well, they're just labels,
So,
but
but they
the-
come.
but are
If
they-
you grow them in the same, if you grow them all in England, you've done it for 4
But they're
generations
just labels,
or more.
but what the
they're
gentleman was
still
asking...
different, or are they?
Well, he was asking, is it effectively?
yeah.
I think what you were saying is it relevant? Really? That's what we're
Well, it
really
might
asking.
be relevant. It might
Is
be
it
relevant. It might be relevant to
Of
some
course
extent.
it is, because
Yeah.
when you say somebody's Asiatic,
And to whom? Is it?
Yeah.
Well, to people, because
Yeah.
when you say somebody's European, you mean they look like you. If you say somebody's African, they look so
Yeah.
it's a definition, but it's
Quick
not.
question
It's
to you,
not
brother.
totally.
Quick question
Without
to you,
in
brother.
totality, obviously.
Maybe just to remind ourselves
Go.
some of the things
Right.
we have in
Jump in.
in the thing also. Like we were still talking, like if we said if I could carry a picture around right now, or perform an experiment right now, and say, please, brother, I forget,
Stevie.
brother Steve, sorry, Steve,
racist.
Tag,
could you
tag.
do me a favor? And you say, yeah, brother Ty, and
White supremacist.
I said, please, can you tell that Australian man over there to give me my bag, please?
Profit for you, I'll do anything.
Yeah. What would be the first image that comes in your mind if you saw 2 people standing there?
Yeah.
One is black and one is white, and I said the Australian man.
Sorry, explain a little bit more. So
If I said, could you do me a favor?
Buddy, take care.
Quickly talk to that Australian man
The white man.
to
I got
give
you,
you
yeah.
to get my bag from him.
With me
and
personally-
you see, I know I'm saying on an experimental
Well, of course
level.
you're gonna go for the
where-
white guy. Of
You see what I'm
course.
saying? So now, but does that really?
Racist.
you might think, you might think,
Yeah.
you would.
I mean,
People in Australia are white.
Yeah.
What this man said.
Exactly.
Simple. Whether
Exactly.
Okay, we
It's not
can.
And it
racism,
depends
it's
where
just-
your
that's
education
One by one,
Hang on,
one by
hang on.
one, one
It
by
depends
one.
where your education's
Yeah.
come from, because you might be educated in such a way, or your propaganda or your education system is such that you might instinctively
How many
think
people out of
that an
how many
Australian is
people?
white, or you,
Brother
No, but
Steve,
you're overthinking it. What
Brother
this man
Steve.
said is true.
Brother Steve,
More
how
whites
many?
in Australia
more
than
Brother
Again,
Steve,
that.
Brother Steve,
Statistically,
let's
it's
check.
understandable.
Brother Steve,
I
how many
think it's
people
understandable.
in England right now? We're not trying to put you on the spot. In London right now, and hopefully I'm gonna do it on the street because I'm now becoming journalist. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna go out with Mike and just do it. I'm gonna get the energy up because we need to start seeing some things. Yeah, if YouTube allows us. Yeah. So what we're gonna do is this: how many people
That's just
out of
YouTube.
10 normal randomly picked? British people, black, white, Chinese, Asian, whatever,
Sure.
that I present the mic to and say, Australian, pick an Australian out of these pictures.
Sure, it'd be interesting
many-
to find out.
how
You know,
many
I'm
them-
not exactly
yeah.
sure.
They're going to say the white
Because
people, surely.
If it's
Some
a little
people will
child
lie,
might
they
say,
say
a
racist.
little child might say, well, somebody who's
being
aware of the
white,
Aborigines.
yeah.
One by one,
ridiculous
one
if
by
I
one,
said an
family.
Indian guy was the
Family,
white guy.
one by
It's just
one.
crazy thing.
Family, one by
Right,
one.
but older people who are
Family,
aware
one
of the
by one.
Aborigines and the history, Captain Cook and all
No,
that
if
stuff
it looked
of
like an
Australia.
Aborigine,
But hang on,
then that's different.
But let me
I'd say
finish.
that's
Let me finish. So then, like, somebody's more educated, they might say, well, actually, the original Aborigines are dark skinned.
But you're talking about Aborigines, not Australians.
But we're thinking, you're
You're
overthinking.
using
No.
the word. Hold on,
So-
hold. You've done something again, which
When
is part
Australia
of our
was coined as
conditioning.
Australia, is that what you're saying?
No, but the question was simple.
This
I'm
is
not
what
trying to
white
put you
people
on the
do.
spot,
But this is what white people do.
I do
because
agree.
they are fearful. I'm not saying you are, but a lot of white people think, well, hold on, I better give the right answer
No,
here.
I'm not. I'm
The
not
answer
at
is
all.
very simple. It's the white guy. Because that's what you would
No,
instinctively
I
do.
kind of, I don't think it's as simple as that.
like
I don't think it's as
Americans
simple as that.
running the world for so long.
It's like Americans.
Yeah,
that's what you have
The only people who are just called Americans are certain white people. But every other people, you have to add on something. The
Like-
Native
like-
American,
Right.
the Black
Italian
American,
American.
the Italian
That's interesting.
American.
Japanese
so what
American,
is a
yeah.
real American to people's minds?
But African American, a lot of African Americans,
There you go.
they don't
again.
like that.
African-
They don't want. They were
brother speak as
American.
well.
Again, there's a
That's
majority.
interesting,
And then you've
One
got
by
Latin
one, one by
Americans.
one family. One by one
Sorry, let
family.
this brother speak.
One
because
by
he
one
hasn't- He hasn't
family.
spoken, so let
One
him
by
just-
one
Saying that
family.
the deciding factor was the majority.
One by one family. Come on, let's
Well,
hear
that's
the
what
brother.
goes on inside our heads. Yeah.
But I don't think that's true.
I didn't even hear you. Sorry, start again,
We're
please,
saying
brother.
that the point earlier was that the deciding factor why you presume it's the white guy
Yeah.
is because that's the majority in the country, right?
I believe that. Yeah, it makes sense.
But I think with America, I think actually, like, you're talking about African Americans, Hispanic Americans, right? Hispanic Americans are going to be the majority quite soon, right? And I think they're very close to it now.
I don't know. I don't know what the stats
I
are.
think it's very close. I'm not sure, but
In certain
it's
states.
very close, right?
Like California.
So it's really, when you think about it, it's not just about
It's
the
gonna-
numbers.
I know, but it's gonna-
a lot more
no, but it's
about
gonna take a little while, isn't it, before that
picture,
sinks in, isn't
the
it?
idea, like the picture of the country, how it's presented to the people.
That would be
what's-
Brazil.
what's-
That would be Brazil.
But that's
things
what
like that.
Australians
That would be
are.
Brazil.
Australians
You know what I mean?
are white.
Latin, yeah.
Because it wasn't
like,
called
it's
Australia.
in terms of like
Who's got the dominance there?
exactly about
Who's running the
No, I
economy?
agree with you.
For
I
instance,
agree with you.
like
That would
Canada.
be Brazil.
Once the Hispanics become,
That would be Brazil.
they
Australia,
still won't be
this-
the
the Queen
dominant,
of
even if
England.
there's more of them, because people
No,
will
they
still
won't.
So it's a monarchy.
associate it with
Yeah.
white people.
Yeah, I'll give you an
Over
example.
time, that may change.
Sorry,
though.
it will.
Is that because of monarchy? Is that because of monarchy in
Well,
this
let me-
country?
let
So
me-
you're not
no, we're
Australian,
talking
so you
about
would
America.
think.
But let me say that
Yeah,
I
I know,
went to
but
LA
that's an example.
in November
Sorry, yeah.
last year, and I was shocked about the demographic change. I was in LA,
Sorry, where?
LA, Los Angeles, and I was in walking around.
LA
I-
means Lagos, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, it's
No,
not
no,
Lagos,
no, no,
Los Angeles. Los
Lagos,
Angeles.
Nigeria.
And so when I was down there, I
you
was
making
shocked
this
at the
complicated?
demographic change. I saw very few white people, and most of them were Mexicans, Chinese. And if you went out to the outskirts, was a bit more rich and prosperous, then you would see white people. But the people
Go to
working-
Beverly Hills, there's
but
a lot of white people
People
there.
working in the shops and everything tended to be Mexican or Chinese.
I think it might
So there's a
have
demographic change happening in America with the Mexicans kind of coming in through California, especially.
I think it might have a lot more. I don't think it necessarily will change. I think it has a lot more to do with the founding of the nation. When you talk about, for example, like America's seen as a white country because the founders of it were white. Australia's seen as a white country because it's Captain Cook who founded it.
A lot of
England
influx
is
of
seen as the white
Brits,
country
Irish,
because
etc.
that's what it's about, and it's that power structure that's passed on and still presented through the culture and pushed out that this is the highness of that culture and etc. And that's what pushes that
And
out. still.
infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they did build things. So
I don't think any of us are doubting anything you say there.
Look at one
There's
funny
definitely,
thing. Can I?
yeah.
Sorry.
No,
sorry.
please, Tom.
Can I
please.
introduce one? Because while we're on it, I know we've deviated off our real main
gonna get back
topic.
to that
here.
free speech.
I've got to talk to
Which
that
was
Australian
free.
guy.
I'm on
That's
need
what we
to
were talking
leave.
about
I'm on
earlier.
need to leave because
I hate
I
free
kept
speech,
some
by
brothers
the way.
waiting
Tiger,
who
go
said they were hungry. They said they were hungry.
Starving.
And
Go for it, Tiger.
I just said, hold on.
This is important.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do a part 2.
We're gonna do a part
build up
2,
at
yeah,
some
see how
point.
he agrees,
Well, I
we'll do
wanted
a
to
part
say, like the country like Egypt. I wouldn't say I know too much right now off my head, but it's also funny that in Egypt, for example, I may not know the whole demographics about it, certain people are called Egyptians, and then there's some people called Egyptian Copts.
Right, Coptics.
You see what I'm saying?
Coptics, yeah.
So they're almost making a division again to say these are the real Egyptians, but those ones are Copts. Now it's based on religious lines, but also tribal or racial lines when you check it. You know, so we always see this addition all the time being added to people's ethnicity, racial description.
Yeah.
There's a black Arab, black Middle Eastern Arab man who went to the Americas in the 70s. Yeah, he's black, has Afro hair. Yeah, proper black, Afro hair. Yeah, he got to America, and immigration marked him down as what?
Well, I believe he's
As
white.
white.
As a white, yeah. And he
As
actually
white.
protested.
He
thought he was
protested
Egyptian.
and
Yeah.
protested
Yeah.
and protested, and
Yeah,
they still
all of
didn't
that
want to
video
lift it.
twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So we see some real
They do
serious.
it with in prison, for example, in America. The Mexicans regard themselves as white.
Yeah, Caucasian.
In the prison. I call it like the power dime. Yeah. White people control the world at this point, right?
Yeah.
So people, I call this semantic. People move to where they think power is. Right? So if you can get away, if white people are running things, then you can get away with being white, you're going to take it.
If it's fair
That's
power.
Jesus. No, there's no such thing. Power's power.
If it's a corrupt-
People romanticize about
I wouldn't be running to Genghis Khan when he was in, like, he had a lot of
No,
power. I
but
wouldn't be
this is
running.
what
I'd be
this
running
man's
the other
saying.
way.
He's
I'd
making
be the
sense.
other way.
No.
Europe, take me.
No, we run to where power, as a humantic thing, with all humans basically, we run to where power is.
And wealth.
Well, reasonable. Good
And
power.
No, not wealth,
we seek
power.
after
Because
power.
Good power.
no, they're
Whatever
separate
guys
things.
it
Don't
is.
get-
You're right,
You
absolutely.
can have wealth.
You
but
have
not
to. You have
power.
right.
There's a lot of rich people
Yes.
in Africa,
Yes,
but they
yes,
haven't got
yeah.
the power.
Yes.
And same with India.
It's
You
a-
have millions,
when you
billions.
have power,
Yeah.
you then can have wealth.
That's true, yeah.
Once you have control of whatever.
But there's a reason why
Right.
we do that, right? Because power is security.
How are we going to get power, lads? Come on.
White
No,
supremacy.
it's
We're
that's
gonna
not
get
really.
power. Shall we
It's better
round
you
up?
say.
Can
Let's do it.
I take my excuse?
Yeah, I meant the same
It's
thing.
better
It's
you
the
Can
same
I
thing.
take
Yeah.
my- can I take my excuse
Because
here,
the
yeah?
reason why
Can
we
I
say
take my
survival
excuse here and get
is
out?
because we're still on
I
a
got the brothers hungry. One of
of
them is
mindset
Not
from
social
our
profit,
past,
you know.
about
profit.
surviving. That's why they say
I
like,
just use it
we
as
eat
an
too
example,
much,
innit,
because
Steve?
at one
I'm
point
just
we
saying-
couldn't eat.
That's
We couldn't get
absolutely
enough
right.
food. That's
Absolutely
what.
right.
So I'm trying to take it from the historical.
Everybody's
Stop it. Stop it.
Look, everybody's racist. Let's get off that
yeah, I
emotional.
agree with that.
Let's get off that emotional high horse.
To say it's
Everybody's
racist.
racist.
No, I'm retired.
To say
You know what I mean?
To
Everyone's
say
racist.
Everybody's
is-
racist.
No,
Now,
all
and guess
racist.
what? Brother,
It's a perfectly
brother,
natural
uncle,
state. It's a
brother,
natural state.
uncle. Look at this thing, yeah. I learned that there's a difference between racism.
We're gonna get back on free speech.
Racism and nationalism. A lot of people, when they start talking about nationalism, it comes across to the masses as if you're talking about what? Racism. But there's nothing wrong about talking your own nation being your own nation. If you say it's wrong, then stop all the borders.
Yeah.
Let me in China without
a
a
nation's
passport.
different because you can enter into a nation. You can't enter into a race. Right?
No, there's nothing called race.
Which is what
Race.
he's saying,
Hold
yeah.
on. Race
But
is
the
an
race doesn't
hold on.
exist, really,
That's so why are we talking about it? Race is an illusion. There's only one race called the human race.
Because of history.
Because we're talking.
You see that? There's
so
only-
really it's not
Ethnic groups.
racism. It's like
Indo-Aryan race.
Yeah, there's only the Nigerian race for the record. You get me? All of you
These dodgy seats.
all of you here is Nigerians, and you're either white
Oh,
or
you're an
black.
Indian.
Why are you being so narrow as to say racist? Why not creed and all the rest?
No, just because
It's better you find a word that says is because again in regards to the survival, if it's there happen to be a different religion from me and I want what they've got, I'm going to take it.
There is
It's not,
a
I
word.
don't care
What
that
do we
we
really
all look
mean when
alike.
we
There is
say
a word.
racist? What
There
are we
is a
really
word.
talking about?
when we say
We're talking-
racist,
No, we're talking
now,
about skin colour.
Brother James,
No,
James,
We
We're
are.
talking about how one looks different from another.
Yeah, but when
Not
I'm
skin
sorry.
colour.
But
Let me
it
go a
is,
little
it
bit.
is.
No. Because right,
English,
we
Irish,
would
no
class
dogs.
the Italians
Yeah, they used to say that on
as the
pubs.
same as you,
be a sign
right?
on
What's
the
your name
However,
again, brother? What's your name
Frank,
again, brother?
The dark
Just tell me. I want to
Italians
guess.
have an issue with the blonde.
So here's a Turkish
North
brother.
would have a problem
All
with
right,
South
okay.
because
Yeah.
one set
Okay,
is
you
darker
cannot-
than the other. If you
colour.
ever watch,
Now
if you ever
hold on,
right?
brother. What's
It's
your
not
name
about
again?
colorism. You could get a
Brother
tan,
Frank,
doesn't
brother
make
Frank,
no
brother
but you know what I
Frank,
mean.
brother Frank.
Let's be
It's
frank.
not about the
Brother
colour.
Frank, let's be frank.
But that's what we always say. When people say, because how do I look? If I'm talking to a Norwegian, or I'm talking to a Dane,
Language.
how can I?
Norwegian.
I know, but
Language,
how do you
language.
well, what's their race?
Now, hold on for me. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second.
That's a nationality. What you've just said, isn't it? That's not a race.
Let's build on. Let's not build.
They're humans. That's a race.
Let's
we
not
all know
build
that. No
on.
one's,
No,
we're
we'd
not
say they're
talking-
Europeans.
None of us are racist, but I'm just saying
that we divide it into continents. That's why we'll say the Australians. Sometimes if people want to make it more accurate, they'll say Europeans in
all
Australia,
I'm saying is I think
Europeans
when
in
people
America.
talk about racism in
But I don't
they
think
really
we've
mean skin
defined.
colour.
I
It's all
really
about skin
don't
colour.
think we've defined correctly the meaning of the word race. We haven't.
No, but
You're
we
vibing off.
know what
I don't
it
think we
means.
can.
No, you don't.
Yes,
Because
we
there is
do.
no pure
Now,
race.
I didn't say
There
you,
is no
I
pure
said
race.
we.
I don't like noise.
retired.
Let's hear what he has to say.
Sorry,
I don't
sorry.
like noise.
It's the fact that one group.
One voice. Let's hear
Right,
what he has to
when
say.
we're talking about race in
Oh,
general,
let's hear the brother. Let's hear brother Frank.
when we're talking about race,
When you do your you.
No, I'm
first.
going to say we because there's a reason why I'm saying we.
Okay,
It's no
fair
point in
enough.
saying
Go for
you.
it. Go for it,
Right.
brother Frank.
We would
I just
say-
wanted
we
to
would
know
say-
which
we-
one
we-
it is.
can
That's
you-
all. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry. Go for
When
it.
we
Yeah.
say race, we tend to be talking about the continents. I would say these guys
Continent.
were Asians, these guys were
We're not
Europeans,
Chinese.
and us.
Hold on.
are you-
Hold on.
Sorry,
You want me to
him
forget or
speak.
what?
Let him speak. Come
Listen
on.
if you're going to listen. Right. So we'd say they're Asiatics, Europeans, Africans.
Okay.
That's the
different
what we
races.
in
That's
general
what it's
would
used for
say,
right now.
yes.
Okay, fair
don't
enough.
you- I
That's
mean-
one. That's one.
Okay, but don't you
Don't
think-
forget what
But
we
it's-
want to
but
do.
it's not in totality.
James, don't
it's
forget
not,
what
yeah,
we want to
yeah.
do.
That's a
We
Victorian.
want to do what they do in Speaker's
wrong,
Corner.
but it's Victorian.
Break things down
Yeah,
first.
but when we talk
Before
about
we jump on
okay,
it.
but stop. When we talk about racism, what we're talking about is discrimination.
No, we're talking
Yes,
about race
thank
first.
you,
Let's
thank
do
you.
with the
No,
race
no, but let
first.
me just. No, but I think that we were coming from this from a racism point of view, and I'm saying that it's about skin colour, and I want to reiterate that because I don't think, for example, that black Jamaicans
I don't think
and
it's a
black
skin colour.
Africans are any different in terms of discrimination that they experience in Western cultures.
It's not about skin color because Indians
not
are
talking about skin
racist
colour,
to darker
really, no.
Indians.
Well, that's skin
yeah.
colour.
But if you're calling someone a different race,
But they're the
it's
same
like-
race.
Yours
They're
is
the same race.
almost
But we
unique.
can't
Say
identify
again.
a race by
As
looking.
Indians,
Say
their
ethnicity.
thing
But
is
we're nobody's
almost
gonna
unique.
discriminate.
Now, let me
If you
drop
say to
something
me
in
That's
here.
been going for
race,
5,000
it's like,
years.
okay,
Nobody else
the
can
See, like us,
can
yeah.
follow that.
Not us, we're
It's a
Indo-Aryan. We're
Victorian-
more racist to the darker
Okay,
I'm
Indians.
totally
let me
with all of this, but
Yeah.
I'm saying
They're
no
very
one
honest,
can
very
identify
honest with you.
ethnicity, so they just
That's very
do it on
honest.
skin colour.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying.
Because they're
yeah.
trying to discriminate. so
But
they
we
just
need
do it
to
on
drop
skin
that
Can I
word
drop
race.
something? Can I drop something
get what I'm
in here quickly? What about if the original? What about if the original intention and definition and meaning of race was not actually to do with skin color,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
class?
Exactly. It was.
What if that is the real thing that you guys are missing
We're
the point
different
on?
races.
Yeah, to keep
But
you
we-
within that class, to keep you within
Yeah, but the
races.
class that they were aiming for happened to be white. The white is not the real defining factor. It's the class first.
Can we just agree that white's
Now,
not
no,
colour,
no,
though?
listen, research it.
Yes.
Research it because you're vibing on inferred meanings and almost ignorant assumptions. Seriously,
Yeah,
you're
but we're
doing
just-
it.
Seriously, you're wrong.
Huh?
Seriously, you're wrong.
Yeah, I'm
Hold
not sure
on,
you're
hold
right on that one.
on. Hold on. Say, sorry,
I
brother
can see a
Frank.
point. I can see a point behind it, but I don't
Go
think
on,
it's a
brother
bigger
Frank,
picture.
yeah. You think I'm wrong, yeah?
It's not any one thing.
No, I know what you said about now. That's how we see it and that's how we use it.
But it's
I'm
wrong.
not arguing with that.
It does,
I
but it's
completely
wrong.
agree. But what I'm saying is,
I think there's a lot of different.
Okay, can I deal with you guys who keep saying wrong?
It's wrong.
No, let me explain. Right. Me and Ty are roughly the same size, yeah?
Yeah.
There's a cow over there,
Same
right?
height.
Yeah.
Cow over there, right? And we can't. He'll survive a week, or I'll survive a week if I have the cow. So I kill him and kill the cow, survive for a week, and there's a difference between me getting to say another part, right? When we're talking about survival, please don't say right and wrong. When it's wrong, right, is when I have a castle, money, riches, and the poor guy there's got a shack, and I decide, you know, that's in the way, I'm going to take it out. But when it's a survival thing, that's a whole different thing about wrong. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm going to use America. Why people coming to America was, in general, poor and so on and so on and so on, right? I believe whatever the Thanksgiving Day was part of their survival thing, right? When you're trying to survive, right and wrong goes out the window. especially if you've got children.
Yeah.
So please don't say this is right or that's wrong, simplistically as that. If somebody's got full belly and all this and everything going on, and it's a matter of breed.
Can I explain my point? Can I explain my point? What I mean? Can I explain?
No, but people keep saying, "Oh, this is right."
No,
this is
yeah,
wrong.
and I said
think
it,
they
and
were
I want
saying
to
it in a
explain
different
it.
way,
Yeah, I'm saying is this: in the Victorian times, what us British and English did is we said that we brought in the theory of evolution, and what we did is we said there are different evolutionary levels, and the white man is the highest as evolved.
He's the most evolved.
So what we have is, we don't just have a white and a black man, we have different sub-races, meaning that literally a black man is like more nearer to a monkey than a white man is.
But you notice
So
you
wait a
said
minute.
white man, which
drop
is
in a
skin
bit of-
colour.
Wait a minute, his
Drop in
skin
a-
colour is brains, and
just
you
said
don't
that.
know it.
Drop in a.
So,
drop in a-
wait a minute, let me finish, guys. So, if you said to me, so when we say racism, what's happening is saying, well, we're different races, we're not. And that
To
was
them.
part of the Victorian bad understanding. Now, if you said to me, in science, in reality, Edin, my name's Edin, are you being racist? I would say, yes, I'm being racist to a dog. Because that's a different race. A dog is a different race to a Homo sapien. But you,
species.
you know, you get no species. Dogs have got different species. So what I'm saying to you is that's what us British brought in. A dog has different species, and so okay, so
It has different breeds.
different breeds, exactly.
And that's
So-
the equivalent of people, right?
Yeah.
Like,
No.
the point is, people, we're one species.
Yeah.
We can all interbreed.
Yeah.
Right? But then it's very dodgy, right?
Yeah.
Because, okay, so that's the classic
Then
idea
call us
is
different
you're a
species then,
if you
but
can
not
interbreed.
races, because races is too, and that's what.
No, but
and
Frank's
that's it.
point about race being broadly, when you're really talking about science,
Say
Interbreed is
species
saying
then.
broadly
different
on the
breeds, like-
continent is correct.
All right, say species. You're Chihuahua.
I'm coming
He's
with
a
something else.
Doberman. But when you
Please
say
do.
different races,
I'm a Chihuahua,
that's
actually.
too much.
Let's try and get
Okay.
in.
I was gonna join him.
I'm a poodle.
All right, can I say
I'm gonna
something
ask.
else?
Hold on,
Said
Brother
before.
Frank.
No, that's
Brother
what I
Frank.
The whites are getting
sorry,
outnumbered
I'm
here.
sorry. I'm sorry, Brother Frank.
Just
Just
so
because I'm in a
racially
hurry. I'm
minded.
Three and a
really
half.
sorry. Brother Eddie, please, I wanted you to drop in because James here, he also quipped in with the word species. Now, if we're going to use the word race, maybe this is time to drop in a bit of Darwinism.
Yeah.
You know, the survival of the races. Yeah. Because
favored
maybe that
races.
that can start to make you think of the actual inference of
I
the
think it
word
was the
race.
survival of the species,
and what?
not the races. The
Well,
survival of the species.
give me the title
and
again.
favoured races.
And the favored races.
Survival of the fittest.
You see what I'm saying? Now, he didn't say the favored colors. The race could have been anyone.
And
You see what I
that's
mean?
how they
Now
defined
look at it.
in
We
eugenics.
are the ones who are now saying
That's how
it
we-
only means black and white. But if we want to say that, that's fine. All we
I've
do,
lost the
all,
argument now. I'm not sure where we're going with this. Is anybody?
Oh, don't worry.
it's a wide.
I'm gonna destroy that.
It's
I
a
didn't
wide.
think we were saying anything.
There's no destroying it.
No, I thought we were all
let's start
agreeing
again.
more or less.
Let's start
Unless
again.
Darwin was
Let's start
correct.
again. Let's start
If
again.
Darwin was correct, we're wrong, then it means that we are different races.
Differences
and-
Oh, now we're
differences
changing
between
the
ethnic groups.
goalposts altogether.
I'm gonna-
Now we're
I'm
changing
gonna-
the goalposts
I'm gonna give a
altogether. Because what we have,
definition of
what we
why
have
we
is,
say racist.
what we have in the beginning, we have the humankind. They've turned it into the human race.
Yeah.
Then they've turned it into the races.
Races, exactly.
You
And
see,
it's not
so
true.
the goalposts keep changing. You don't even know which one they're talking about anymore. Humankind, there's only one. So you mentioned species. He mentioned he's been racist towards dogs. We're not the same kind.
don't think you can be racist
Fair
towards
enough.
dogs.
No, I
Now,
wouldn't have thought
Darwin
race.
said that it's highly likely that they came from monkeys who evolved. Now, if you're a monkey, how can you still be?
Whoa. We came. What Darwin said
Yeah.
was that we came from a common ancestor to the apes. The apes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
so
the
we have
and
a
the
common ancestor with apes.
Yeah, who is the
We
we?
didn't-
Who is the we though?
we didn't come from
Who's the
all
we?
of us.
No!
Yes.
He did say that.
Excuse
He did.
me.
That
Hold
was-
on.
Didn't he?
Hold on.
He did say
Hold
that.
on.
That will teach you.
Hold on. Hold
did
on.
say say that.
Look, I'm not. I don't do
No,
arguments.
brother, listen.
Let Ty
I'm
say
listening
things.
to you. I heard what you said.
He did say
Say your
that.
point. Say
But
your point,
what
Ty.
he said
Did I get it
was,
wrong?
let me come in, guys. Let me come in. He did say that.
No, I accept
but
that.
what
he
he
did.
said was, is the white man is the furthest as more evolved, and the black man
but
is
this is all proven
and
to be
you put
bullshit.
me. Yeah, but we still use the same
Can I come
terminology.
in now? You guys are
And we
boring
need
now.
to drop that terminology.
Okay,
Right,
there
you guys
go.
are boring.
Let
Now,
Frank
can I
come in. Let Frank come in.
Right.
Because we're not
the reason why we
racist.
have to
We're
actually
the same race.
Yeah, I know we're the same race. I know.
Yeah, so I cannot be racist. I can't. We're the same
certain
race.
operations, I can't remember if it's
Simple.
bone marrow.
I know.
It's a race specific. You can't give me bone marrow, he can.
Exactly.
That's why we can be race specific about certain things.
Or
But when these guys are being
ethnic group
silly-
specific.
Yeah, because
Okay,
the
can I just ask you a
physical.
question, Frank? Simple. So, you're saying it's racial, so that's continent-based.
No, he didn't say racial. He said
No,
ethnic.
before
No,
Frank
no,
was
no,
talking
no,
about
no,
continent-based.
I don't mean necessarily, but it has to be somebody like me that gives me like bone marrow. It can't be you
Fine, because I'm white or because I'm European?
because you're white and
blood type
European, if you
or
like.
Because European.
Yeah, okay,
There's
so-
no point in
but it's
saying
an important
European
point.
in that sense.
No, but it's an important point
because if we're both from Europe, we could still give each other bone
but
marrow
are
if you want to
saying-
get complex.
No, but I want to
I'm
drill
being
down
more
that.
racial so we can specify.
Perfectly fine. Nothing, no problem.
Right, because say
I
we
wanna
tend
get
to
to
be
the- I wanna
all
get
right.
to the point
Part of the
of the
reason
Jamaicans
is
and
part
the
of the right. Part of the reason is because we tend to be either positive or plus.
Right,
Where
okay.
you guys will be A or B or AB or something
think
like
I'm
that.
A.
Our blood
Yeah.
tends to be a bit different.
Sure.
Right, but
I didn't know this.
when
This
they've
is
done
interesting.
like bone marrow, it has to be race specific. I know a woman, right? Her father was Chinese, her mother was white, and she had Asian, and she had to have Asian black.
So basically,
all of
there's
them.
medical
She had to have.
reasons
She had yes.
Very good.
Yes, because the physical aspect that we are give us a degree of definite.
We know there's definite
as
differences
opposed
in
to
aspect.
spiritual. Yeah. So when people are saying
It's like to be genetics specific.
Genetic.
Because when you talk about race specific, race is really.
Oh yeah,
it
lovely to
is
talk to you,
kind
man.
of-
We'll talk again. Yeah, really good.
There are certain, like, for example, you talk about African Americans, right?
Man, really nice to talk to
So
you.
you have someone who's an African American,
man.
they can have maybe 90% white blood. Right?
Wonderful conversation.
Yeah,
Nice.
we'll try and continue next week. I'm hoping.
stuff. I like it.
So the race
I
is
drop a
more
comment on that.
Nice stuff. Yeah, please do.
I drop a comment.
We'll do. Yeah, we'll talk. Yeah, great.
yeah, but
having the shared
This is how conversation should be. At Speaker's Corner.
Sub-Saharan African
Non-confrontational. Nice.
I'm warning you.
So, just can we just go back to I just want to clarify the thing. Would Jamaicans be able to be used in this for the Africans, or are they different?
Jamaicans different.
It's quite broad.
Yeah.
Actually, let me put it this way: the broadest genetic code
trying to get
is
to
actually
whether it's black
right.
or
hold
whether
on,
it's
hold on. Just to give you an idea,
Yeah.
the broadest genetic patterns is by the Sosa people, called the pygmies. They've got the broadest.
Oh, really?
So out of say 100 of them, let's say they got the H
Short
virus,
people are
right?
most sophisticated.
They
Yeah.
more of them would survive proportionately than all the rest of humanity. They've got the
Really?
broadest thing of all,
good to be
right?
short.
So what I'm basically
I'm a
saying,
midget, not a pygmy.
I'd have,
I'm sure what it is.
there's more say of in the African continent, say like look like us, that would be able to give me a bone marrow than say you two. There's always a small percentage that you might be able to, but so there are certain things, as he said, genetically, right? That's it.
But you've moved into.
The point is,
I totally accept what you're saying, but you've moved into a different area from what I was
Because I
discussing.
kind of wanted to be more specific
No,
when
that's
these
fine,
guys are
that's
saying, "Oh, okay, the race, blah blah, we're all one
But
human."
my
There are certain
point
specifics.
was about racism. That was my point, which was different from what you're saying, and I don't deny what you're
What was
saying.
your
at
point
all.
about racism
Well, I was
again?
saying that racism goes along skin colour lines and not ethnicity, because it's
I don't
incredibly
think it does
different.
necessarily.
No, I think it
like,
does.
racism doesn't, because even in Russia there was a problem.
No, it's
and
not. It's not
simple.
it's not as simple
no.
as colour
think it
skin.
is.
Because the Russians, for example, right? I didn't know this till recently. The white Russians, like I look like you, Putin, are actually a minority in Russia. I didn't realise that, right? And they look at
Belarus,
particular
white Russia.
other Russians. They call them blacks.
Oh right, yeah.
You see,
But not your kind of black.
definitely not my kind of black.
Yeah.
Although there is my kind of black in Russia, which I didn't know.
There is,
So they call these other Russians blacks.
Yeah, but
Because-
obviously
But
the
that's a
Russian name-
colour.
Huh?
Because they're white.
They're non-white.
Okay.
Darker.
I keep
darker.
saying this. The paradigm is controlled by whites, and people move to the paradigm. That's why God is white, even if he isn't. Right. In Nigeria, for example, and in Nigeria,
the atheist
they've got
over
a massive head of a white Jesus or God. Amazing.
Where's this?
In Nigeria, because they're the most religious people on the planet. 98% of them
Nigerians,
believe in either God or Allah or whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
What was that city in Nigeria, that big city that they had there?
I
Benin,
could not recall.
something like that. It was began with B.
Maybe Benin.
Benin, yeah, something like that. Yeah. Big city. Are you aware of that one? It's a big city, Nigeria.
Did
Don't
you say
talk to me
if
about
there's
geography,
a,
man.
did you say if there's a God?
Ancient
I'm
city.
an atheist.
Oh, you're an atheist.
I'm just teasing.
You are an atheist, or you're not?
I am an atheist, but I was
Okay.
teasing about if there is a God.
Do you get a lot of people attacking you
Here,
because you that say, oh, you believe in something because you don't believe in God?
I tell you what I found was very interesting coming here, is that people say to you, but what did you believe in before you was an atheist? And I say, I've always been an atheist. And they,
Right.
a lot of the atheists apparently here,
Yeah.
they have beliefs first and then they turn to atheism.
Yeah.
Because what I've been arguing and
Yeah.
discussing, it's different now because the definitions have changed, because now
Yeah.
we have soft and hard atheism today.
Oh, right. No,
We
I
do.
didn't know
Yeah.
that.
So a hard atheist is
Yeah.
someone that says there is no God.
Right.
And if they deny God and they
Yeah.
disbelieve God.
Right.
A soft atheist
Yeah.
is someone who says, I've taken the non-position. In other words, it's not up to, I don't need to say anything because
Yeah.
I'm someone who does not believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just
Yeah.
a non-position. I'm
Yeah.
born this way.
Yeah.
But when all of the dictionaries, the Oxford English, of course, is written by the people of the time. So
Yeah.
a lot of these definitions came in around about the 1570s, right?
Yeah.
So these definitions for atheism, and of course they're written by Christians. So they're saying it's all about denial. So
Yeah.
in other words, an atheist is someone who actively denies God,
Yeah.
as opposed to someone who just doesn't think about it. There's no compelling evidence for me, right? So I
Yeah.
just take the neutral position.
Well, it's interesting because historically Europeans got religion from others east or wherever, right? But they were originally meant to be pagans.
Yeah.
But don't forget, I mean, you got your...
Wiccans and
yeah.
Pagan
Druids.
means
But
a-
obviously
a
you've
village.
got the Romans had their gods, the Greeks had theirs,
Yeah.
the
Right.
Scandinavians had theirs. So there was, should we say, white gods,
Okay.
polytheists,
European gods.
What's polytheism
European-
again?
well, multiple gods, yeah.
Yeah, makes more sense. to
But
me.
then, of course,
In some
your
ways.
Abrahamic gods,
Yeah.
God, sorry, dominant, super
Yeah.
dominant, and
Yeah.
it took over, swept the West,
Yeah.
including here.
Yeah.
The Vikings converted,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
to Christianity,
Yeah. And you
Why do
guys
you
went
think that is?
overboard.
Why
with
do you
it.
think it's the monotheism that's
because
taken over
because it's a very
It's easier. You don't have to deal with so many gods. Just one.
no,
Just,
but those
I've got to get
gods,
them with
those
working
gods
week, just one god.
don't. They don't deal with the big issues. Is the problem? It's kind of like they're doing their own thing. They might get involved. If you pray to them, they might not listen.
Yeah.
Whereas with the monotheistic religion, you've got this very definite. You do this, you get this.
Yeah.
Right, so you get eternal life in heaven, or you get no hellfire.
Yeah.
So it's a much better message. They're dealing with what people really care about, which is what happens. They want meaning in their life, right? And when you've got like 20 gods all saying, "Oh, yeah, I'm the god of like flowers or whatever," this is not helping people with the meaning of their life. And people want meaning. We all crave it. We all have an innate religion.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Again, gonna Europeans. On
Yeah,
this,
go
right?
ahead.
Is that I find there's a huge number of them that are atheists as opposed to the other races. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I call them the next episode, right? And it was when I saw, it was Merlin with Sam Neill, I think it was. Right.
Okay.
There's a bit in it where he's fighting this magic woman, and he's got magic.
Morgana, probably.
Morgana, that's the one.
Yeah.
And they open up a
The Arthurian
door.
legends.
In the last bit, and they go, and she goes, I may not be able to kill you, Merlin, because they're both weakened, but I can kill them. And he says, don't quote me precisely. He said, I know how to get rid of you, man. I know how to get rid of you. I said, no, you don't. Then he says, how? He said, the way to get rid of you is to forget you.
Yeah.
And they turn around. He said, you don't forget me, don't forget me.
That's the gods.
And she disappears. And it was brilliant
Yeah.
because that would then told me this is what white people understood, what I call the next episode, because they stopped believing in God and believed in themselves. Next episode. But
Built in
here's
God's
the thing.
image.
Here's the thing. Spirit.
Concept of.
No, spirit, right? People of color believe in the Holy Spirit. You guys believe in another spirit. What is it?
I have no idea.
Alcohol.
Oh, I don't
If
know.
you don't have one spirit, you have another.
Oh, I see.
It's a generalization, but it was something
Very much, yeah.
that I know that I observed.
Okay.
Right, because what I say is to whom much is given, much is required. I actually agree with your concept because, in my opinion, religion is very destructive. Unfortunately, it's a necessity, but it's very destructive. If I'm killing you for your land, that makes sense. Or you killing me for my land, that makes sense. You're going to grow and blah, blah, blah.
Been that way for a long time.
But to kill me over that, that's crazy. That is like a level of madness.
But it also it puts us in tune as a larger tribe religion. So it can have a positive effect. Stop us killing each other. It could.
If it's controlled.
Remember what I said about the paradigm?
Yeah, I know.
Okay, here's the thing. The people who are religious want to come and live in your environment, be it America, Europe or Australia.
Don't we know it?
Right? But they don't want to admit it, right? The reason is, right, and I like God's option, in or out. The reason is they have the option, right, to be Muslims, for example, I will say that's the major religion, right, or not. To drink alcohol, have sex, whatever, or not. They have an in or out.
And this is very interesting.
Whereas from where they're from,
So
there is no option.
you're saying that they are purposefully buying into our religion.
No, not buying into your religion, but they like the freedom of choice. Because the God choice, right, is if God actually appeared, we have no option. He exists. But by never appearing, you have the option to be an atheist. I have the option to believe in. This is the genius, if you like, of God.
Right, but you were, correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that the religious folks in other countries choose to come here so that they have the choice to not believe. Is that what you're basically saying?
Yeah, I'm saying it in this manner, that if the religious people from other countries could all come here, the masses of them would.
There's a lot of benefits here.
Yeah. But is that good?
No, but I'm talking mainly that because religion, remember, controls a lot of stuff.
And is that good for a society where you've got that kind of liberalism to have that freedom? Well, obviously that's going to diminish. If people come over with their beliefs, which aren't tangible, their beliefs, and they think they're doing best, but it's just their belief, is there logic there, or are they actually going to damage the very thing that they've come in for? That's the problem with belief.
No.
You don't think so?
No. Because you guys weren't here 30 years ago.
I was, yeah.
You were?
Yeah, I've been coming
old.
since the 90s.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, all right. In the 80s then.
I bet I'm older than Frank.
Right. No, I doubt it.
I might be.
I'm 57. I'm
54, I'm
58.
close.
Not close enough.
Close. We're close.
Right.
We've got to stick together, us oldies.
yeah.
Us
Here's the
oldies.
thing.
I'm 40.
Yeah, youngster.
If you were here 30 years ago,
We're going
right?
down to Macadam's.
When you were here,
Let's do it.
the majority of people were Christians,
Yes.
right? Remember the majority of Christians? At a point, right,
You've not been slagging Tommy, boy.
the majority
Not today.
became Muslims. Now, if you remember that time, the Christians were much more hardcore. Not to necessarily the level of Muslim. They were more hardcore. They were majority, right? Now, what you will find,
We're going to head out, guys.
They've-
Really lovely to
they've
talk to you,
mellowed.
Frank. And you, sir.
right?
Yeah.
30 years
See you
from
in a
now,
minute.
See you in a bit,
the Muslims that are here will mellow. Only the new Muslims will be like this.
Do you think? So you think the Christians were just like the Muslims were?
No, not to that level. Because remember, they're because the Christians, when they were hardcore, was of the general master. When they were actually throwing women in the river for being left-handed.
When was that?
Which
30 years ago?
find a general? This is
That's
all,
years ago.
This is all back in those times. Remember, those times for the Muslims is kind of like. Not these times, but not far off these times, because we're still looking at Saudi,
But is
where their Mecca and the Medina
is that going to cause problem for this kind of like progressive liberal society that they want to come into? That is going to take it back just by what you're saying. If they're more backwards in their belief, more backwards how this country was 5, 6, 7 years
it's
ago.
not optional because right, Britain's been fighting wars like 1,000 years, right? They're masters. The Americans are amateurs compared to Britain. So no. No, because they've learned. One of the things about Britain is it learns from the people before, from the Romans and so on and so on. It's always learning.
You have to learn.
It knows when it comes to war. These people are not a threat. Now, Russia, China, that's a threat. Right. Britain can't take them on. So they have to reason, just like with America. Right? They have to reason. But with these guys, you want to go to war? Bring it. One submarine would take out their places. Simple.
Sure. But what about like subversion? If you've got essentially a Trojan horse in a society, there can be a lot of subversion at least that takes place within the society.
No, because when you're religious, you're at a great weakness already anyway. Right. But, Malcolm X said it. By any means necessary. Right. So the people of here will use any means necessary. They're not restricted by religion. Whatever it needs to survive, it's going to survive. Right. Religion will always restrict you because you're not supposed to do this, you're not supposed to do that, blah, blah, blah. Right, so if you talk to a Muslim, for example, I might say, okay, I agree with Palestinians blowing up parts of Israel. I do, right? But as Muslims, they're not allowed to do that.
No. Are they?
No, because
there's a lot in the Quran about fighting, you know.
Yeah, but there's fighting and there's particular ways you have to follow certain rituals.
Well, I don't know, you know.
Yes,
I don't know.
You do.
I think some of it's open to debate.
And
for
remember,
instance, explosives weren't available, say, even 1400 years ago. But that's the new thing that's come, which isn't really written about.
But get what I'm saying. The vast majority of if there's 1.7 billion Muslims, it's going to be a tiny fraction that's actually going to go against what they're about.
The trouble though, when you've got secular people like you have in this country now, is that they're not really keen to go to, or they're not really keen to follow a leader. Whereas with religious people, you know, they're like, yeah, well, whatever the imam, whatever the leader of the religious group, whatever religion it is, whatever the religious leader says, you're going to follow it to your death because you believe.
All right, let me put it this way.
There's a lot of power.
Okay, the Taliban. All right, man. The Taliban, right?
Okay.
That's a different story because that's forever, because that's part of their psyche and so on. But when you come to here, you soften in general. You're not so hardcore. You know, you like, for example, you're Muslim. There's certain Muslims, I'm sure, drink alcohol, for example.
But can I interject for 1 second? But you know that the most hardcore converts are actually the ones that born in the Western world, not the ones born there.
Yeah, because there's nothing like a convert.
So they're more dangerous than the people who are actually. When you go to Africa, Ghana, Gambia and everything, you know, people are very peaceful there.
Yeah.
They play with other religions, they're tolerant, everything.
Yep.
But when you come to the Western side, and you find religion, Christianity, whatever, they're less tolerant than anywhere else in the world. Yeah. Western religion just seems like a different religion.
Right.
When you go to Africa, you can find a Christian, a Muslim, a Jew praying together and all happy in the same family with arguments. But you come here and I haven't talked to you. You're this. I can't tell you this. And they are the people who are converting.
There's more divides now maybe than there was before.
No, I don't think divides. It's not divides. Remember, in Africa, the religion is there for a long time, more than here.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not about dividing. It's about how you apply your ideology.
Right.
So it's very important how we're taught how we think, what we think. So these kids here, especially for me with ISIS and everything, it's like they're born in the Western world and then they made feel guilty that they're born here. Then they think, oh, now we'll fight back for our people. They become more aggressive and violent. They think I have more to do than my brothers there because I have benefited more. So they feel this ideology that you have to be more violent.
More proof.
To prove yourself. It's like the little gang, gang guys. The young gang members always want to prove themselves.
But it's the media coming to feed them this ideology. But people who don't live in the Western world, don't feel that ideology, they don't live that way.
No.
It's only the kids here who are deprived of their manhood, their identity. So when you're lost, so now you've got all these things you have to give out.
Sure.
So you have to let it out.
Yeah.
So I always say blame society. The society makes these problems happen.
I like that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Lots to think about. Take care, man. See you later. Yeah, I think so.
What? Is this you?
No.
Nice man, content over everything.
COE.
Oh, you're
COE,
the content
COE.
over everything.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, you know now, yeah?
Legends.
I know of you
The
guys.
legends.
I know of you guys.
That is, yeah. And a makeup man as well. You can get the things out of your eye. Expert.
How did you come up with content over everything?
Content over everything. Content over everything. From your melody.
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to my general, oh God. Go inside and let Papa start playing and 1 2 1 2